Existences like the common people's regal were all promoted with caution. Even though I despise him and want to defeat him, this advantage of his is indeed worth learning, Ors thought to himself. Yes, your grace. Even though the 4 supreme gods felt that their emperor was making a mountain out of a molehill, they did not dare to refute like Matzo. After saying that, they left. Aus stared at their back as they left. A coldness gradually surfaced in his eyes. These guys are relying on the fact that they have become supreme gods and have begun to disrespect me in their hearts. Strength is a double-edged sword. If it weren't for the fact that I already have my own path and don't want to use the Scarlet Origin power to forcibly increase my strength, how would you have a share in advancing to the supreme god level? I'm already the first to become a supreme god, Ors muttered to himself. Thinking of this, he thought of the legendary lord of the supreme great cosmos, common people's regal. How did he do it? I heard that everyone in his territory, from the supreme gods to the ordinary civilians, is extremely loyal to him. Foreign life forms want to instigate the subjects of the blazing sun divine kingdom, but after many parties took action, none of them succeeded in instituting the incitee defection. Instead, they lost a large amount of resources. Furthermore, that guy advanced to supreme god not long ago. His strength has actually improved again. Common people's regal. Ors narrowed his eyes, even though he was very unwilling to admit it. It had to be said that there were many aspects of he that he admired and even worshipped. Of course, this did not hinder Aus's determination to defeat him. He shook his head and stopped, thinking about it. He continued to review the memorials. Now that the Scarlet Divine Kingdom of Chaos had just been established, various matters came one after another. He had been dealing with these matters for almost half a day. Should I also create a clone technique? It's said that many high-level lords use this method to free themselves from complicated matters so that they can focus on cultivating and increasing their strength. Os mumbled as the name of that existence appeared in his mind again. He shook his head, feeling like he was possessed. At the same time, in the chaotic Scarlet Divine Kingdom, Central Region, Tower City, Zhou 15, and the rest boarded the spaceship. They saw a scarlet race wearing blood-colored armor and a blood-colored helmet, revealing only a pair of scarlet eyes as soon as they arrived. They carried a snow-white longsword on their backs and were floating in midair. They quietly watched they arrive, as if they had been waiting for a long time. I am Turon, Turon said coldly. Today, you ignorant invaders will die. Swoosh, a terrifying arrow wrapped in the power of 10,000 gods, carrying a shocking aura that swept through the world, flew towards Turon at the speed of teleportation. Wherever it passed, the scarlet clouds in the sky were torn apart, creating a wide and straight passageway. The tower city on the ground was also swept away by the arrow's powerful arrow aura, creating a ruined path. Time and space stopped, heaven and earth were silent. Terror had just surfaced in Turon's originally cold eyes, when the arrow pierced straight through his glabella, before shooting straight into the sky and disappearing. Turon's eyes widened. He never expected his ending to be like this. He had just become a Grade 1 Supreme God, and his beautiful life as a Supreme God had yet to begin. How did it end? I can't take this. Turon spat out a few mouthfuls of divine blood and said with a trembling voice. Then he quickly lost his breath. Grade 1, Supreme God, dead. On the side of the Scarlet Alliance army, Bai Yun sheathed her bow and stood up. His expression was calm. He was not proud at all that he had killed a Grade 1 Supreme God. He had even killed a Grade 4 Supreme God, let alone a mere Grade 1 Supreme God. He turned around and returned to the succubus lord's side, standing with his bow. His expression was calm, as if he had just done something insignificant. The surrounding Scarlet Lords were silent. They looked at Bai Yun in a daze, their hearts already in turmoil. A Grade 1 Supreme God was killed just like that? Why did it feel like killing a Grade 1 Supreme God by the Succubus Lord's side was as easy as killing a chicken? Could this Supreme God be a Grade 4 Supreme God? Thinking of this, they took a deep breath and contributed to the warming of the Crimson Great Cosmos, Grade 4 Supreme God. That was a top Supreme God. He was only one step away from the Supreme Will realm. Such an existence had actually appeared in front of them, and had even become a Supreme God consecrated by the Succubus God Lord. They felt that their worldview had been overturned. When they looked at the Succubus God Lord again, their eyes were filled with shock and jealousy. What kind of price did this Succubus Lord pay to actually be able to invite such a top Supreme God as her worshipped God? It couldn't be that pretty boy who charmed all living beings, right? Moreover, if this Supreme God had such strength the moment he attacked, what kind of shocking strength did the Lord standing on the other side of the Succubus Lord have? This unfamiliar Supreme God seemed to be on the same level as this Supreme God who used arrows. Could it be that this person was also a top Supreme God? All the God Lords looked at each other and saw the meaning in each other's eyes. He had to be more respectful to this Succubus Lord in the future. Two top-notch Scarlet Supreme Gods. If it was true, even Ors, who had a chance of becoming the 5th reserve army of the Scarlet Supreme, could not compare to him. Needless to say, they were Scarlet Lords who were even inferior to Ors. This was a huge thigh. They had to hold on tight. However, a doubt appeared in their heart at the same time. Since the Succubus Lord already has such a powerful expert protecting her, why does she need they to come and help? Is it because we don't have enough troops, or is there some other reason? Many thoughts surfaced in the Scarlet Lord's minds. Zhou 15 naturally did not know what they was thinking. He could guess a thing or two just by guessing, but he didn't care. If he revealed his strength, he would reveal his strength. Otherwise, he couldn't possibly run away when he saw the Supreme God, right? Then he could forget about conquering a small, chaotic Scarlet Divine Kingdom for the rest of his life. Moreover, exposing his strength would make these Scarlet Lords more convinced of him and make it easier for him to command them to do things for him in the future. The matter of him establishing a beginner grade master god tier nation would probably fall on them. At this time, it would be easier to conquer them with their strength and arrange for them to establish a master god tier kingdom in the future. Most importantly, with the reality cube, Bai Yun and their strength would be exposed. The reality cube should be able to cover it up. Zhou 15 did not let the reality cube recognize him as its master. Its owner was still the Supreme Will. Zhou Zhou and his many clones only had the right to use it. However, Zhou 15 inexplicably felt that the cube could hide it from the Crimson Overlord even with only the right to use it. This made Zhou 15 feel that the reality cube was not simple. He did not think too much about it and continued to lead the Scarlet Alliance army towards the capital of the Divine Kingdom of Chaos. On the way, they happened to encounter the other 4 Scarlet Supreme Gods who dared to come together. At first, the 4 Supreme Gods were very surprised that the Succubus Lord's Scarlet Alliance army could not get past Turon and come to them. They, who were a step late, thought that Turon alone could defeat the Scarlet Alliance army formed by defeated opponents. However, they did not think too much about it and prepared to continue attacking the Scarlet Alliance army, wanting to claim the credit. And then, they were killed. He looked exactly the same as Turon. Let's keep going. The Succubus Lord's calm voice came from the main ship of more than 100 spaceships. The Scarlet Lords did not dare to be negligent and continued their journey. Most of they lacked courage before they set off. However, after experiencing these 2 battles, they were already confident of their goal. Perhaps this was the confidence brought about by strength. The capital of the Chaos, Scarlet Divine Kingdom, Ors was handling administrative matters. Right at that moment, another messenger quickly ran over from outside the shrine's main hall and knelt on the ground. He looked flustered. His eyes were filled with shock, as he had found out something unbelievable. Os couldn't help but frown when he saw this. Was the quality of the messengers of their Chaos Scarlet Divine Kingdom that low? You get all flustered at the slightest thing. He was now the master of the beginner grade, Master God-tier Kingdom, and had 7 supreme gods under his command. With such powerful strength in hand, it was no exaggeration to say that he was not afraid of any enemies other than those at the Supreme Will realm. He had a relationship that Crimson Overlord valued even if a Supreme Willpower realm expert really attacked. Even a Supreme Willpower realm expert wouldn't easily do anything to him. Therefore, he looked down on his messenger's flustered behavior. Could this messenger not know which country he was from? He was now a messenger of the powerful Chaos Scarlet Divine Kingdom. How could he meet the experts of the other divine kingdoms when he was shocked by small matters in the future? If this were to happen again in the future, it would be a disgrace to him. Os, who valued his reputation very much, had already decided to wait for a while and order his ministers to replace this messenger. However, he still said indifferently, "Yes? Your Majesty, it's urgent," the messenger said anxiously. "I just received the latest news. The 5 newly promoted supreme gods sent by His Majesty have all died at the hands of the Scarlet Alliance, army led by the Succubus Lord. Since the 5 supreme gods were unable to stop the other party, this Scarlet Alliance army has already entered the inner territory of our divine kingdom and is not far from the chaotic Scarlet Divine Capital. If there are no experts to stop them, it won't be long before they arrives at our chaotic Scarlet God Capital and poses a threat to our God Capital and His Majesty." "What?" Os sat up in shock and looked at the messenger in disbelief from his first sentence. The other Scarlet ministers in the shrine also listened to the messenger in a daze, as if they were listening to some fantasy story. By the time the messenger finished speaking, the entire hall had been silent for a long time. "No way," a minister suddenly shouted angrily after an unknown period of time. This minister was the Prime Minister of the Chaos Scarlet Divine Kingdom. He was also a Chaos Scarlet human. He and Os had worked together since the beginning of their rise and had made many contributions along the way. Now, his status had risen step by step, and he had become Os's most trusted Prime Minister of the Divine Kingdom. Even the selection of the 5 newly advanced Supreme Gods was handled by him. It could be seen how much Os trusted him. At this moment, after he heard the messenger's words, he looked at the other party with red eyes and said angrily, "Are you joking? The Succubus Lord is just a defeated opponent. How can she have the strength to kill 5 of our newly advanced Supreme Gods? Prime Minister." The messenger trembled and said in fear, "How could I dare to lie about this? I saw it with my own eyes. There's also a photographic stone here that records the scene of the death. I can play it for you if you don't believe me." The Prime Minister stared at him without saying a word. He didn't dare to look. "Play it," Os said in a gloomy tone. "Yes, Your Grace," the messenger said respectfully. Then, he took out the photographic stone with trembling hands and injected energy into it. On the surface of the transparent photographic stone, various illusory scenes kept changing. Finally, a virtual scene was projected in front of the ministers and Os. The recording of this virtual scene was very comprehensive and realistic. Os and the ministers could not see any problems. Upon seeing this, they had already realized that what was recorded in the virtual scene was the truth. There was nothing fake about it. After the virtual scene was played, the ministers present, including the Prime Minister and Os, who was sitting on the throne, fell silent. In their expression, there was only one other expression other than disbelief and shock: fear. All the ministers of the Chaos Scarlet Divine Kingdom looked at the 2 supreme gods behind the Succubus Lord in fear, especially that supreme god who used superb archery skills, top supreme god. One of the Scarlet Ministers said bitterly, "The Gustorin Ma." Other Scarlet Ministers were silent and did not retort. Killing a Grade 1 Supreme God with 1 arrow. He was definitely a top Supreme God with such strength. However, the problem was, Why did Noctul, who had been looked down upon by them, suddenly have two top supreme gods under his command? Furthermore, after they had just defeated the other party had two top supreme gods under their command. At that time, they clearly remembered how heavily injured and on the verge of death the succubus god lord was. How long has it been? How did it become like this? Now, they even had to look up to the succubus lord, who had these two top supreme gods. Because even Emperor Aus, whom they revered the most, only had two Grade 3 Supreme God Realm Supreme Gods under him. They were still a little lacking, even though they were very close to the top Supreme Gods. They would definitely not be able to resist if these two top Supreme Gods attacked. The suppression of a top Supreme God on a non-top Supreme God was too great. They could not think of any possibility of a comeback, no matter how they thought about it. What now? All the Scarlet Ministers present were pondering this question. Then, they couldn't help but look at Aus, who was sitting on the throne. Aus also noticed their gazes, while he appeared calm on the surface. He was already starting to feel lost on the inside. Two top supreme gods. What could he use to fight? If the two Grade 3 Supreme God realms under him heard that they were fighting against two top supreme gods, they would probably go their separate ways in the blink of an eye and abandon him. The two Grade 3 Supreme God realms were originally invited by him at a great cost. Be it to his chaotic Scarlet Divine Kingdom or to him as Divine Being, hoping that they would risk their lives to protect him and his Divine Kingdom? Are you kidding me? Oz would be thankful if they did not defect to the enemy and offered themselves to the enemy. So what should I do now? Eus thought about it and realized that there were only two paths left in front of him. One was to run for his life. Even though Aus was extremely unwilling to take this path, his life was at stake. He could only take this path if he had no choice. The second option was to surrender. Aus only thought about this path for a moment before he abandoned it without hesitation. Surrendering to a former loser? He could not accept it psychologically. He would rather flee in a sorry state than surrender and live an ignoble life. He took a deep breath, turned to look at the god spirits and said, "Everyone. As you can see, there are actually two experts suspected to be top supreme gods in the Succubus Lord's Scarlet Alliance army. This emperor doesn't know where he hired such an expert, but an expert of this level is definitely not someone we can deal with. The only outcome left for us would be destruction if we were to forcefully resist it." "Everyone," Eus said in a low voice, "let's escape. It's not embarrassing to run away from a top supreme god." Silence. The ministers present fell silent. They looked at Aus in a daze. They did not expect His Majesty to make such a decision. Aus had just established the territory of a beginner-grade master, god-tier lord. He had even received a reward from the Crimson Overlord not long ago. Logically speaking, he should be at his peak right now. Unexpectedly, he encountered such a crisis that was enough to destroy the Divine Kingdom today, forcing Aus to give up on the newly established Master God-tier Kingdom and escape. They were both shocked and somewhat impressed. If it were them, they might not be able to be as decisive as Aus and give up the Master God-tier Kingdom that they had just established so easily. Perhaps the Succubus Lord would attack and destroy them while they were hesitating. Aus also saw the admiration in the minister's eyes. He looked calm on the surface, but his heart was bleeding. "You think that's what I want? If it weren't for the fact that there was no way to resolve the current crisis, how could he easily give up on the Divine Kingdom that he had just established?" He knew very well that once he gave up on the Divine Kingdom that he had just built, he would come out of this place in a sorry state. Not only did it mean that he had lost everything he had accumulated so far, but most importantly, his performance would definitely disappoint the Crimson Overlord. When the Crimson Overlord saw his performance, it would definitely remove him from the pre-selection range of the 5th Reserve Army of the Crimson Overlord. he would really have no chance of becoming the 5th Reserve Army of the Crimson Overlord. Succubus Lord! What is so good about you? Why are you able to get the help of 2 top supreme gods? Why did you force me to this point? You caused all this! Damn it, if I had known earlier, I wouldn't have easily accepted the Succubus God Lord's plea and spared your life. Instead, I should have completely crushed you to death so that you wouldn't have a chance to start all over again. A moment of weakness actually raised such a huge disaster. Os was extremely regretful at this moment. However, the compensation that the Succubus God Lord had given him back then was indeed enough, and he had built a new Master God tier kingdom at a time when he needed resources the most. He also thought that he was just a defeated opponent, so what could he do? Therefore, he agreed to the Succubus God Lord's request. I didn't expect the Succubus Lord to really turn the world upside down. Aus sighed in his heart. However, he also knew that this was no longer the time to blame himself for his pest. Escape was the most important thing now. Everyone, let's split up and retreat. This way we won't be caught by them all at once. Aus stood up and looked at the ministers below. If this emperor survives this time and makes a comeback in the future, he will definitely not forget all the ministers. When the time comes, we'll fight for the position of the master of the universe. When he said this, he did not feel confident at all. The ministers below also responded one after another. Their expressions were extremely concerned, but their hearts were very calm. They did not have any hope of making a comeback. How could there be so many people making a comeback in this world? Most experts would not be able to stand up after falling. Looks like I'll have to find a new master in the future. The Scarlet Ministers thought to themselves. Then, they couldn't help but think of the Succubus Lord who came here. Wouldn't the Succubus Lord with 2 top supreme gods be the best candidate to seek refuge with? At the thought of this, they glanced at Aus on the throne and lowered their heads quietly, not letting Aus notice their strange gazes. Aus naturally did not know that these guys were already planning to seek refuge with the Succubus Lord, his greatest enemy, just as they were about to disband. He immediately packed up and found a direction before teleporting away after he made this decision. Aus was a Master God tier who had achieved success with the laws of chaos. He grasped many methods, especially in terms of teleportation. With the augmentation of the laws of chaos, his teleportation speed and distance were even stronger than that of a Master God tier who was good at teleportation. Just as he thought that he was about to escape, his expression suddenly changed. At the same time, Zhou 15 and gang had already led their army to the Crimson God of Chaos. When they arrived, they were surprised to discover that there were no defensive and counter-attacking facilities set up here. It was like a beauty who had given up resisting and looked like they could take her whole. This is giving up? Zhou 11 stroked his chin. It made sense. They had not concealed their strength at all along the way. If they could not make the other party give up resisting, he would really have to admire the other party's courage. Come on. With Zhou 15's order, the Allied forces descended into the chaotic Scarlet capital. With 2 top supreme gods around, they was not afraid of being ambushed. Soon, they landed in Aoi's shrine. The shrine here was extremely vast and had the lore of space added to it, so it was more than enough to accommodate them. Not long after they came down, they saw a group of Scarlet ministers in Scarlet official uniforms running over together. Then, they came in front of they, and said respectfully and fearfully, "Greetings, Your Majesty Succubus. We are willing to surrender and serve Your Majesty. Please spare our lives, Your Majesty." "You're smart," Zhou 15 chuckled. After saying that, he looked around and asked, "Where's Aus?" The leader of the officials, the Prime Minister of the Chaos Scarlet Divine Kingdom, stood up and said, "Your Majesty, Aus had already escaped alone. But don't worry, Your Excellency. I've already sent the 2 supreme gods to chase after them. They should be back soon." 3 figures descended from the sky just as he said that. The 2 figures on both sides were 2 grade 3 Scarlet Supreme Gods. As for the figure who was caught in the middle and looked like he had nothing to live for was the master of the Chaos Scarlet Divine Kingdom, Zhou 15 looked at the despairing Aus and couldn't help but laugh. It didn't feel good to be stabbed in the back by his own people, right? He stood up and walked in front of Aus. He looked at Aus's familiar face and said meaningfully, Os. It's been a long time. Os did not understand what the succubus lord meant. It's been a long time. Didn't they see each other not long ago? At that time, the succubus lord was still defeated by him. Who would have thought that the situation would be reversed not long after? The victor, the king, and the loser. Feel free to do so if you want to kill or torture me. Aus lowered his head and said. Zhou 15 clicked his tongue and said in surprise, Your cerulean planet culture is not bad? As the common people's regal became the Supreme Lord's 4th Reserve Army and the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, became one of the top Lord factions in the Myriad Worlds, the culture of the cerulean planet also spread to the Myriad Worlds. However, Zhou 15 was still a little surprised to hear a Scarlet Lord say the idiom of cerulean planet in the Scarlet Great Cosmos. Has the culture of the cerulean planet spread to another universe? Ors did not answer. Zhou 15 didn't ask further. Instead, he asked, Do you have anything else to say before you die? Zhou 15 actually admired Aus, the little common people's regal of the Crimson Great Cosmos. In addition, his way of hiding was very similar to his main body, so Zhou 15 was willing to give he a chance to leave his last words. As for subduing him, impossible, even though Os's talent was not bad, and he had also cultivated to the Master God tier level at this time. This guy's identity was too sensitive and could easily attract the attention of the Crimson Overlord. Hence, not leaving Aus behind was the best choice. Os couldn't help but look up at Zhou 15 after hearing Scarlet Lord's words, Succubus Lord. I once let you go. Aren't you going to let me live? When Zhou 15 heard this, he really started to think seriously. Let Aus live? It's not impossible. The original body had indeed been spared by him, after all. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to enter the Succubus Lord's body. While his original body and his original body were not big shots, there was such a cause and effect after all. In addition, he was worried that Aus would expose his identity if he was with him. But couldn't he just not let Aus stay by his side? And finally, there's another very important reason. Zhou 15 touched his chest where his heart was. He, or rather, his main body, already had the arrogance of an expert, facing a defeated loser who was no threat to him. He was very willing to show his tolerance. The current him no longer needed to carefully survive like before, after all. He pursued the elimination of the root of the problem and eliminated future troubles. He was not even 1/10,000th of himself when Aus was at his peak. Even if he could make a comeback in the future, it would probably be very difficult for him to reach his former peak. This Emperor can let you live. But this Emperor wants to cripple your divine spirit realm and Lord talent. Zhou 15 said. Ors's face immediately turned pale. Cripple his god spirit realm and Lord talent? This was making it impossible for him to rise again. Still, as long as he could survive, it didn't matter if he rose again or not. Okay, please use your means, Your Majesty. Aus gritted his teeth and said, Zhou. 15 nodded, he looked at Aus, and a golden light flashed in his eyes. The next second, Aus felt the divine spark in his mind shatter quietly. The vast amount of divine power in the divine spark also turned into countless energies that dissipated from his body and returned to heaven and earth. And the power of his will quietly dissipated into nothingness. He was now like an ordinary scarlet life form. He only had a normal body and soul. He was not even a Black Iron tier superhuman. At the same time, he also felt that his Lord talent had instantly vanished without a trace, as if it had been stolen. Aus was in a daze. He knew that he had fallen from heaven to hell. The power and glory of the past were now completely isolated from him. He had now officially become the most ordinary member of the endless living beings. Just go, Zhou 15 said calmly. Thank you, Succubus Lord, Your Majesty. Ors said bitterly. Then he stood up and staggered away weakly. After walking for a long time, He finally walked out of the vision of the gods. Only then did he dare to look back. It's over, Ors muttered to himself. At that moment, he felt a sense of loss and heaviness, but he also felt a sense of relaxation that he hadn't felt in a long time. Maybe. It would be a good thing for me to give it all up. An ordinary life might give me another kind of satisfaction. With the expectation of another life and a sense of relaxation, Aus walked briskly into the distance. At the same time, "Your Majesty, would you like me to?" Bai Yun said in a low voice. He knew Zhou 15's personality and style of doing things very well, which was why he asked this question. No need. Zhou 15 shook his head. He looked at Aus's departing figure. Even at this moment, he still didn't have any premonitions. This proved that the other party was indeed no longer a threat to him. Zhou 15 was blessed, by great luck, and trusted his premonition very much. Since his premonition did not warn him, there was a high chance that the other party would never rise again. Come on. Zhou 15 did not think too much about it. He turned around and entered the shrine, quickly obtaining control of the Chaos Scarlet Divine Kingdom. And when the control was in his hands, Zhou 15 had a thought. The request to advance to a high-level Master God tier Lord appeared in front of him. Among them, the requirement to conquer the Lord territory of the 3 beginner, Grade Master God tier Lords under the Crimson Overlord had changed from 0-3 to 1-3. Zhou 15 nodded slightly. Linger's Spiritual Medicine Master God tier Kingdom had already been taken over by the country. Now, as long as he conquered 2 more beginner-grade Master God tier Lord territories under the Crimson Overlord, he would be able to meet all the advancement requirements and upgrade the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom to a high-level Master God tier Lord territory. Thinking of this, Zhou 15 looked at the other Scarlet Lords of the Scarlet Divine Kingdom. A portion of the Scarlet Lords looked in the direction where Aus had left and sighed with a complicated expression. Another portion of the Lords looked at Zhou 15, excitedly, as if he was a superstar. Zhou 15 smiled in his heart. He naturally knew what they was thinking. Aus had always been suppressing them. Among all the Scarlet Lords, he was the most likely candidate to become the 5th Reserve Army. They had actually easily destroyed the Scarlet First Lord under the leadership of the Succubus Lord, causing him to fall from heaven into the dust. Everyone who had experienced this feeling of defying the heavens and turning the tables to defeat their competitors knew. At the thought of the huge Chaos Scarlet Divine Kingdom, they might be able to share some of the benefits. How could they not be excited? Allies. Zhou 15 said, "Now that the Chaos Scarlet Divine Kingdom has been destroyed in our hands, this Emperor won't say much. Let's divide this Chaos Scarlet Divine Kingdom." The Scarlet Lord's eyes lit up as they stared at Zhou 15, waiting for him to continue. In this war, this Emperor is the main force and has contributed the most. Therefore, this Emperor wants all the wealth of the Chaos Scarlet Divine Kingdom and half of its territory. As for the remaining half of the Chaos Scarlet Divine Kingdom's territory, logically speaking, this Emperor should have distributed it to everyone present. But now, this Emperor suddenly has a new idea. This Emperor can give you 2 choices. 1. From this half of the Chaos Scarlet Divine Kingdom's territory, this Emperor can divide this portion of the Divine Kingdom's territory for you according to how much effort you have put in. 2. Give up your portion of the Chaos Scarlet Divine Kingdom's territory, and this Emperor can help your Lord faction advance from a Divine Kingdom Lord faction to a Master God tier Lord faction. Guys, what's your choice? Zhou 15 asked. The 25 Scarlet Lords looked at each other and saw the shock and suspicion in each other's eyes. Can there be such a good thing? Was this Succubus Lord really willing to help them become a Lord faction in the Master God tier Kingdom, and he only wanted some territories? This is impossible, right? If one had the strength, they could have as many territories as they wanted, and the resources to advance to the Master God tier Kingdom were not easy to obtain. What motive did this Succubus Lord have for him to say such a thing? The Scarlet Lords were speechless. Zhou 15 knew what they was thinking when he saw their expressions. He shook his head inwardly. If he had said this in the supreme great cosmos, any divine kingdom lord would have agreed decisively by now. They would not be as hesitant as them. Forget it. Things like prestige should be accumulated bit by bit. In any case, he would have to stay in the crimson great cosmos in the future. This emperor knows that you might find it hard to believe. But why don't you take a look at the two top supreme gods behind me? Zhou, 15, pointed at Bai Yun, and the other two supreme gods behind him, and teased, "Do you still think that this emperor can't help you? Advance to become a divine kingdom lord with them around." The Scarlet Lords immediately reacted. That's right. With these two top supreme gods around, it would be very easy for the Succubus Lord to gather the resources to advance to the beginner grade master god-tier kingdom. If the other party wanted to support a few divine kingdom lord factions and promote in them to master god-tier kingdom lord factions, it was indeed not impossible. Your Grace, we believe you. The Shadow Lord of the Scarlet Divine Kingdom said, "But can you tell us why you paid such a huge price to support us to become the Bok Lords of the Master God-tier Kingdom? I don't think a few territories are worth His Majesty paying such a huge price to exchange for, right?" The other Scarlet Lords also looked at Zhou 15. This was also the reason for their doubts and hesitation. Zhou 15 smiled and said, "You're a smart lord. All right, since you've thought of this emperor won't hide it from you. From some sources, this emperor learned that the Crimson Overlord hopes that more Master God-tier nations will be born in our Crimson Great Cosmos. If this emperor helps you build a beginner-grade Master God-tier nation, it will most likely increase this emperor's importance in the Crimson Overlord's heart. It will also increase this emperor's chips to become the Crimson Overlord in the future. That's why this emperor wants to help you. There's another reason. This emperor recently learned that in the future, when a beginner Grade Master God-tier kingdom advances to an intermediate Grade Master God-tier kingdom, or a high-level Master God-tier kingdom, one needs to conquer other Master God-tier kingdoms in order to complete the advancement. The speed of your advancement is too slow. This emperor wants to help you build it quickly. This way, when this emperor needs it, he can directly choose to attack the newly advanced beginner Grade Master God-tier kingdoms to fulfill the requirements to advance to Master God-tier kingdoms." "Do you have any other questions this time?" Zhou 15 asked. What he said was 80% true and 20% false. However, it was precisely because of this way of speaking that the Scarlet Lords present believed him even more. I see. The Scarlet Lords were enlightened. At this moment, they no longer had any hesitation on their faces. Most of the life forms in the world were afraid of the unknown. When the unknown was solved and became known, no matter how terrifying this known was in his heart, he already had a trace of confidence from knowing no more questions. "Your Majesty, would you mind if we discussed this?" Cain said respectfully. Zhou 15 nodded. When the lords heard this, they started discussing. They didn't hide it from Zhou 15. After hearing the contents of their conversation, a faint smile appeared on Zhou 15's face. A moment later, the Scarlet Lords finished their discussion. Then Lord Solon of the Dark and Scarlet Divine Kingdom stood up and said, "Your Majesty the Succubus, we have finished our discussion. Among the 25 Scarlet Lords, Lord Cain and I are willing to accept His Majesty's help and strive to establish our Master God-tier kingdom as soon as possible. As for the other Scarlet Lords, His Majesty will see how much effort he makes to divide the territory of them." Zhou 15 looked at the other Scarlet Lords. The other Scarlet Lords did not retort even though they had different expressions. Zhou 15 nodded. "In that case, this Emperor will divide it up for you now." After saying that, he immediately took out a map of the territory of the Chaos Scarlet Divine Kingdom. Then, he divided his main territory into half and submitted it to the Succubus Divine Kingdom. In the other half of the Chaos Scarlet Divine Kingdom's territory, Zhou 15 divided it into 23 parts, according to the contribution of the 23 Scarlet Lords. Then, he showed it to them. They all agreed to this territorial division after they finished reading and confirmed that there were no problems. Then, Just as Zhou 15 was about to leave with Solon and Cain, he heard the king of the Shadow Elven Divine Kingdom carefully say, "Your Majesty, you should be attacking the Scarlet Lord's territories next, right? We can help too. When the time comes, Your Majesty can just give us a little territory like today. We won't ask for too much. We just hope to help Your Majesty." Zhou 15 stroked his chin and nodded with a smile. It seemed that they wanted to use Solon and Cain as scouts to see if they were really willing to help them establish a beginner grade master god-tier kingdom. We'll make other plans after confirming it. That was why they suggested helping. This way, not only could he have the chance to apply for his help in the future to establish a beginner grade master god-tier kingdom, he could also avoid becoming enemies with him, preventing him from hearing the news of the Succubus Lord's attack the moment he returned to the Divine Kingdom, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. However, this was exactly what he wanted. Therefore, he agreed. The Scarlet Lords present heaved a sigh of relief seeing that the Succubus Lord had agreed to their requests. They looked at Lord Solon and Lord Cain. Next, it would depend on whether these 2 powerful lords could successfully obtain the help of the Succubus Lord and successfully advance to a beginner grade master god-tier lord faction. If they really became the lord of a beginner master god-tier kingdom with the help of the Succubus Lord, they would also need to apply for his help to establish a beginner master god-tier kingdom. It was too difficult to establish a beginner grade master god-tier kingdom by themselves, after all. Who knew how many years they would have to wait if they were to do it by themselves? It would be much easier with the help of an expert. They could not help but look at the 2 top supreme gods behind the Succubus Lord. Tours was good to have an expert by his side. Why couldn't they encounter such a good thing? They sighed in their hearts. At this moment, Lord Solon and Lord Cain also noticed the other Scarlet Lords looking at them. They sneered in their hearts. These people treated him as the vanguard, so how could they not have their own schemes? As the saying went, the first person to eat crabs would obtain unimaginable benefits. By the time they established the Master God-tier kingdom with the help of the Succubus Lord in the future, he might have already obtained more benefits. 1 step behind, 1 step behind. That's how the disparity develops. As for why they dared to be the first to eat crabs, other than the benefits given by the Succubus Lord, the most important thing was that the dark scarlet gods behind Lord Solon and the scarlet gods behind Lord Cain had the protection of the Scarlet Supreme Gods. Even if the Succubus Lord suddenly attacked they in the future, and they, who had the protection of the Supreme God, actually had the ability to protect themselves, that was why they dared to eat the crab. Zhou 15, who was sitting on the throne, could understand their inner thoughts with a simple glance. His heart did not waver at all. In the face of absolute strength, all schemes and plots were laughable. Let they play by themselves. Zhou 15 couldn't be bothered. After that, the other Scarlet Lords other than Lord Solon and Lord Cain took their leave. After Zhou 15 dismissed his attendants, he directly asked them, "What else do you need to advance to the beginner grade master god-tier kingdom? Tell me." Lord Solon and Lord Cain looked at each other. Then they told each other what they needed to level up. Zhou 15 shook his head. "You have a beginner-level Divine Kingdom Lord faction and an intermediate-grade Divine Kingdom Lord faction. Let's upgrade the territory. Them to a high-level Divine Kingdom Lord faction first. It's the resource needed for an upgrade. Take it and upgrade it." Zhou 15 threw 2 world rings to them. Solon and Cain's eyes lit up when they saw this. They first thanked him respectfully, then immediately took the rings with both hands and used their willpower to inspect it. When they saw the upgrade resources inside, they could no longer suppress the excitement in their hearts. Excitement appeared on their faces. The resources inside were enough for them to upgrade their respective territories to true god-tier advanced grade territories and upgrade their respective countries to high-level divine kingdom lords. So this is the benefit of cozying up to someone powerful. It is simply worth it. The two lords of the divine kingdoms could no longer hide their excitement and gratitude to Zhou 15. Their gazes were no different from looking at their ancestors. You guys can leave. After you upgrade to a high-level Divine Kingdom Lord tomorrow, come and ask this Emperor for follow-up resources. Zhou 15 waved his hand and said, "Yes, Your Grace." In Solon and Aus left. Zhou 15 looked at their departing figure and fell into deep thought. They was promoted to a beginner-grade master god-tier lord faction and lacked 3 resources the most. Chaos, divine treasure. Scarlet hero, scarlet. Holy artifact, a divine artifact of the race contaminated by the scarlet aura. The Chaos Divine Treasure was very simple. The Chaos Divine Treasure required to advance to the beginner grade master. God-tier kingdom only required 500 units. 2 beginner grade master God-tier kingdoms only cost 1,000 units. Scarlet heroes were a little troublesome. This was because he did not have the hero inheritance manual of the scarlet creature. However, it won't be too hard to solve this. Attacking a few Scarlet Divine Kingdom Lord factions could easily obtain hundreds of thousands or even millions of Scarlet Heroes' hero inheritance manuals. When the time came, he could give these hero inheritance manuals to Solon and easily create a large number of Scarlet Heroes. Scarlet Holy Artifacts were not difficult. It was the same as obtaining the Hero Inheritance Secret Manual. Attacking Divine Kingdom Lords or Scarlet Race forces could easily obtain a large number of Scarlet Holy Artifacts. Looks like the war on my side won't stop. Zhou 15 called Bai Yun over. Bai Yun soon came over. Your Majesty, Bai. Yun said respectfully, tell the Scarlet Lords to stop. Just say that this Emperor intends to immediately launch a war of conquest around the Succubus Divine Kingdom after reorganizing the troops and wealth of the Chaos Scarlet Divine Kingdom. Get they to bring their troops to the Succubus Divine Kingdom to prepare for a new war with this Emperor at any time. Zhou 15 said, Ain't they willing to help? Let's start now. It was impossible to be promoted to a resource. A master for nothing, pay first before anything else. Yes, Your Grace, Bai Yun said respectfully. Then she turned around and went to do her work. After Aus left, Zhou 15 stroked his chin and stretched out his right hand. He saw a ball emitting 7-colored light appear in his hand. This ball was none other than Aus's mythical tier unique Lord Talent Sphere, the Kingdom of Chaos. He would be able to inherit a high-level Divine Kingdom faction, the Chaos Scarlet Divine Kingdom, as long as he fused with this Lord Talent Sphere. At the same time, he would become the new Patriarch of the Chaos Scarlet Divine Kingdom. An interesting Lord Talent Sphere, especially since I'm the controller of the chaotic human tribe in the Crimson Great Cosmos. Looks like I have to help my main body unify the entire Chaos human race today, Zhou 11 thought. Then, he didn't hesitate and directly chose to absorb the Lord Talent Sphere. A moment later, he had completely absorbed it. Then, lines of text appeared in front of him. Lord Talent notification. Congratulations. You can inherit all the inheritance of the Chaos Scarlet human race, as your strength far exceeds the inheritance requirements. You are now the Patriarch of the Chaos Scarlet clan. You have now become a high-level Divine Kingdom Lord faction, the Lord of the Chaos Scarlet Divine Kingdom. It has been checked that you are the controller of the Chaos human race in the Supreme Great Cosmos. Congratulations, you have completed the unification of the ancient Chaos humans. The ancient power of Chaos has awakened in your body. You have obtained the inheritance of the Chaos willpower. Currently, you can activate the parts below the low-level Supreme Will realm. When your strength increases, you can activate the subsequent inheritance. Your Supreme Race Divine Artifact, the Common People's Cauldron, has awakened the power of the Chaos Will. Your Common People's Cauldron has awakened racial skill, Common People's Will. Then Race Divine Artifact. Name, Common People's Cauldron, Equipment Grade, Race. Race Divine Artifact Ability, Unification of all life, Universal Race Divine Artifacts. Place the race divine artifact of the people of foreign races in the cauldron of all life. After consuming a certain amount of luck, you can transform the divine artifact of the people of foreign races into a universal race divine artifact. The successfully transformed divine artifact of the people of foreign races will nourish your luck and augment your own forces. Note, the unification of all living beings can only be used once a day. Race divine artifact ability, Lives Suppression, gathers the power of all living beings and creates an earth-shattering sealing technique to suppress the enemy of the owner of the common people's cauldron. Currently, it can suppress and seal a low-level supreme willpower realm expert. Race divine artifact ability, Lives Suppression, gathers the power of all living beings and creates an earth-shattering sealing technique to suppress the enemy of the owner of the common people's cauldron. Currently, it can suppress and seal a low-level supreme willpower realm expert. Race divine artifact description, Common People's Cauldron, also known as the Common People's Unification Cauldron. It's a race divine artifact exclusive to the Common People's Regal. It has the effect of changing the world and bathing the common people. Zhou 15 was shocked after reading it. The newly awakened divine artifact skill, Lives Suppression, could actually mobilize the power of all the subjects under its command. It could at most suppress and seal a low-level Supreme Willpower Realm expert. That was a low-level Supreme Will Realm expert. It could actually be suppressed and sealed by his race divine artifact. This is great. He finally had another offensive method that could have an effect on Supreme Willpower Realm experts. The effect of this skill was second only to the formless book in his hands. In the future, when he went out with this race divine artifact and the formless book, he would have a certain level of confidence even if he were to face an attack from a Supreme Willpower Realm expert. The only disadvantage was that the side effects of using the common people's suppression were a little too great. After using the common people's cauldron, the subjects under the owner of the common people's cauldron would actually enter an hour of weakness. He had too many subjects under him. Currently, it could even be said to be the Lord faction, with the most subjects among all the Lord factions in the myriad worlds. The subjects under him were weakened for an hour, which was almost equivalent to the overall strength of the Supreme Great Cosmos decreasing by 1%. While this ratio was small, it was already quite shocking in the entire Supreme Great Cosmos. While the suppression of the common people is very strong, but use it as little as possible. However, you can't hesitate when you should be using it. The safety of the main body and the clone is the most important after all. I'll give more compensation to my subjects at worst. I believe the subjects will be willing to accept it, Zhou 15 thought. As the Scarlet Lord, he had the protection of the Crimson Overlord. This race divine artifact was almost useless. However, Zhou 11 and Zhou 12 were searching for the Chaos Divine Treasure in Tianjun's corpse. They might encounter danger one day. There were more than one Supreme Will Realm expert there after all. They did not have any enemies that they were afraid of. They would be in danger if they encountered Zhou 11 and Zhou 12 and had a conflict. In addition, Zhou 13 and Zhou 14 were searching for ultimate void crystals and chaos divine treasures in the ultimate void cosmos. They were even in a more dangerous situation than Zhou 11 and Zhou 12. If that's the case, leave this race divine artifact to Zhou 11, Zhou 12, Zhou 13, and Zhou 14. Use it as you see fit. Leave this race divine artifact to Zhou 11, Zhou 12, Zhou 13, and Zhou 14. And use it as you see fit. Then he threw it into the number 1 treasure vault. Anyone who needed it could just use it. In addition, the inheritance of the chaos will make Zhou 15 very excited. It was not inferior to the will inheritance of the Supreme Will at all. Now that he had this inheritance, his chances of advancing to the Supreme Will realm in the future would be a little higher. Right at that moment, a soldier hurried in from outside. "Reporting to your Majesty," a chaotic scarlet human appeared outside. The other party called himself Lei Jie and was the previous patriarch of the chaotic scarlet human race. "Let him in," Zhou 15 said with an expected expression. Yes, Your Grace, the soldier said respectfully and left. Soon a tall and strong elder one with grayish-white hair walked in from outside the hall and walked towards Zhou 15. His posture and aura did not look like he was submitting at all. Zhou 15 raised his eyebrows slightly and smiled. He casually took out a cup of tea. He slowly released his coercion as he blew on the hot tea. In the eyes of Lei Jie, the leader of the Chaos Scarlet clan, he just wanted to show off his strength to the new Chaos Scarlet clan patriarch and fight for his future status. However, he felt an incomparably terrifying pressure emanating from the other party just as he did this provocative action. This terrifying pressure was like a wave that constantly rushed towards his divine body, soul, and will. Every round of attacks increased the pressure on Lei Jie. Soon, this pressure increased to a level that made Lei Jie break out in cold sweat. Who is this new patriarch? Why do I feel a pressure from him that's not inferior to a top supreme god? Lei Jie was shocked, however he gritted his teeth and continued to persevere for the sake of himself. He tried his best to walk in Zhou 15's direction, and yet, 1 step, 2 steps, Lei Jie gritted his teeth and wanted to take the 3rd step. However, he could no longer withstand the increasingly terrifying pressure before his foot landed. His entire divine body collapsed and knelt on the ground. Only then did Zhou 15 seem to notice Lei Jie now. He raised his head and looked at Lei Jie in surprise, the former patriarch of Lei Jie. You're the previous patriarch of the Chaos Scarlet human race. Why are you bowing so respectfully to this emperor? Get up. He smiled faintly and said. Lei Jie felt the pressure around him suddenly disappear. He looked at Zhou 15's calm smile and was indescribably shocked. He was a grade 1 supreme god. Just how strong was the succubus lord to be able to give he so much pressure? After a long time, since his majesty has already become the patriarch of the Chaos Scarlet clan, it's only right for me to follow the etiquette of a subject. He replied bitterly. The Scarlet humans of Chaos have been waiting for a powerful and intelligent existence like your majesty to become our leader for a long, long time. Zhou 15 smiled. It seemed like this fellow did not know that the Chaos humans had already been unified. Lei Jie, Zhou 15 said. I'm here, Lei Jie said respectfully. Announce yourself as this emperor's subordinate, Zhou 15 said. Lei Jie was stunned, not knowing what the succubus lord meant. Isn't he the other party's subordinate now? He hesitated for a moment before saying, I, Lei Jie, the former patriarch of the Scarlet human race, am willing to become the succubus lord. No, not Zhou 15 said. It is a subordinate of the common people's regal. Lei Jie's pupils constricted. After a long time, he seemed to understand everything as he slowly said in a deep voice, I, the former patriarch of the chaotic scarlet human race, Lei Jie, am willing to become a subordinate of the common people's regal. Zhou 15 nodded slightly. As the Lord of Peace took effect, the former patriarch of the Chaos Scarlet human race, Lei Jie, and the Chaos Scarlet human race under him officially became citizens of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. Their loyalty immediately reached more than 90 points. Lei Jie's expression became visibly fanatical when he looked at Zhou 15. The Chaos humans are finally united now. In the future, when this emperor's identity is exposed, lead your Chaos Scarlet human race to the Supreme Great Cosmos and merge with the Chaos human race again. Zhou 15 said, Yes, Your Grace. Lei Jie had no objections. They had not merged previously. Firstly, it was because of the era. Secondly, it was because there was no existence like Zhou 15 who could suppress an entire race alone. It had been too long since the era of the Chaos Will. The Supreme Will and Crimson Overlord gradually stopped paying attention to the chaotic human race in the two great cosmoses. Lei Jie understood with Zhou 15's appearance. The time Zhou 15 mentioned was the best time for the Chaos humans to unify. Therefore, he was not afraid at all. I can't say no. Zhou 15 nodded, slightly right at that moment. He suddenly sensed something and looked into the distance. He said, "Leger, retreat first! As for the Chaos Scarlet human race, it's fine as long as they operate normally." "Yes, Your Grace," Leger said respectfully. Next, it transformed into a bolt of chaotic lightning and disappeared into the air. When Zhou 15 saw this, he turned around and sat down on the throne, waiting for the guests to arrive. Soon, a dark purple figure flew over from the sky and landed at the entrance of the shrine in the blink of an eye, turning into a graceful and charming dark purple figure. Zhou 15 could not help but sigh seeing this existence in front of him. She's really beautiful. Even though she was inferior to him in terms of looks, she was already more beautiful than 99.9% of the living beings and God's spirits. At this moment, this charming figure was also looking at Zhou 15 in surprise. He never expected that to happen. It had only been a short while, but this little fellow before him seemed to have undergone a tremendous change. He could not even see through this little fellow while standing here. How did he do it? What did I just experience? Too many doubts lingered in his mind. Just as he was about to say something, he saw two figures quickly fly in from outside the shrine and land on both sides of Zhou 15. They were Bai Yun and another, subordinate of a grade 4 supreme god. At this moment, they looked at the other party coldly, as if they were about to start a fight if the other party offended them. This charming figure was very shocked by the two top supreme gods that suddenly appeared in front of the succubus lord, but she did not do anything sensitive. "Don't be nervous. This is the head of our succubus clan. She won't harm this emperor," Zhou 15 smiled and said. At the same time, he pointed out the other party's identity. It was the patriarch of the succubus clan, the succubus godlord, who could also be said to be the succubus divine ancestor. This was because his cultivation was that of a grade 1 supreme god. No wonder he could plead for leniency in front of Aus and spare the predecessor of his divine body. Zhou 15 thought to himself. Even though that was what he asked, he had no intention of making Bai Yun and them move aside. They still stood in front of separating them from the succubus god lord. The succubus god lord's expression froze, looking a little embarrassed. However, he didn't say anything. Instead, he tidied his expression and smiled. "Noctul, congratulations. You've finally defeated Aus and become the most qualified candidate to be the 5th Reserve Army of the Scarlet Lords." Zhou 15's expression was a little strange. What was there to congratulate for defeating such a weak Scarlet Lord? However, this was a comparison with the main body after all, so he naturally couldn't compare. Therefore, he said calmly, "Lord Godlord Succubus, you flatter me." Then he stopped talking. The succubus godlord was not embarrassed when she saw this. She turned around and said, "Since you've defeated Aus now, your previous promise is still valid. You're still the only succubus lord of our succubus race. Your divine kingdom can still be called the succubus divine kingdom. I can still support you from behind." He thought that Noctul would be very excited after he said this. This was the full support of a supreme god and an entire race after all. The benefits were self-evident. However, Zhou 15's reaction was beyond his expectations. "That won't be necessary," Zhou 15 said indifferently. "This emperor feels that even if this emperor doesn't rely on the succubus god race, this emperor can still live very well on his own. He can even fight for the spot in the 5th Reserve Army." The succubus god lord was stunned. This was different from what he had imagined. He was a supreme god, and a supreme god that carried the resources of the entire succubus race. Noctul was actually not tempted by such abundant resources. Then he saw the two supreme gods in front of Noctul. He sensed the aura of a top supreme god emanating from the other party's body, and his expression gradually turned ugly. He got it. It must be the confidence these two top supreme gods gave Noctul, since he was only a grade 1 supreme god after all. Even though he could not tell the strength of these two supreme gods on the surface from the powerful aura emitted by them and the battle results of destroying several supreme gods previously, These two supreme gods probably had the terrifying strength of at least a grade 4 supreme god. With such strength and the terrifying power behind the other party, it was really possible that Noctul looked down on him and his succubus race. Not to mention that he had given up on her previously and even did not allow her to continue competing for the Scarlet Lord title as the Succubus Lord. When the Succubus God Lord thought of this, she knew that something was wrong. She seemed to have really offended the Succubus Lord. Under such circumstances, it was not easy to salvage the friendship between the two of them. However, who would have thought that a severely injured Scarlet Lord, whose Divine Kingdom Lord faction was about to collapse, would suddenly have the help of an expert to turn the tables? Now, he was the candidate most likely to become the 5th Reserve Army? If he had known about this, how could he have given up on Noctul? The Succubus God Lord opened her mouth, not knowing what to say to resolve the misunderstanding between them. When Zhou 15 saw he like this, he found it interesting. However, he didn't want to chat much with him, so he said, "Your Excellency, the God Lord of Succubus, you can leave now. This Emperor will continue to use the title of the Succubus Lord to compete for the Scarlet Lord position in the future." Zhou 15 did not say much for the rest. However, even so, the Succubus God Lord was still overjoyed. Since Noctul could say this, it meant that he did not take the conflict between the two to heart. The Succubus would be much more relaxed as long as this signal was there. As for how to build a good relationship with his son with a bright future in the future, or even bind them together, they could take it slow. There was no hurry. Okay. In addition, Succubus Lord, this is a small gift from me. It's my congratulatory gift to congratulate you for taking down Orse's chaotic Scarlet Divine Kingdom. I hope you can conquer more powerful enemies in the future and become the 5th Reserve of the Scarlet Supreme as soon as possible, or even become the true Scarlet Supreme, the Succubus God Lord said. At the same time, a world ring flew out of his arms and landed beside Zhou 15. Zhou 15 swept his gaze and nodded slightly. From what he could see, the treasures in the world ring were nothing. However, from the perspective of a grade 1 supreme god, this gift was already heavy enough. It would probably make the Succubus God Lord's heart ache for a while. That's good enough. In fact, he didn't really mind what the Succubus God Lord had done. The one suffering was the original body, after all. What did it have to do with him? He would not take responsibility for everything. Now that the Succubus gods had taken out enough, sincerity to compensate, Zhou 15, the beneficiary, cared even less. As for the Succubus God Lord, she did not say anything else. Afraid of arousing Noctul's impatience, she quickly bade farewell and left. Not long after the Succubus God Lord left, Bai Yun respectfully said, "Reporting to your Majesty, the Allied Scarlet Forces have returned and are ready to attack the other Scarlet Forces with His Majesty at any time." Okay, Zhou 15 nodded and stood up. "There's no time to lose. Let's start our war of conquest in the Crimson Great Cosmos now." "Yes, Your Majesty." Bai Yun's eyes lit up. At the same time, they fought a war of conquest in the Supreme Great Cosmos and the Crimson Great Cosmos. Not many experts had been able to do such a feat since the establishment of the two universes. He was very proud to be able to do this with His Majesty. Then, the two gods of they did not waste any time. They immediately returned to the Succubus Divine Kingdom and led the army to start a war of conquest against the lords around the border, with the Succubus Divine Kingdom as the center. Under the suppression of powerful troops and absolute peak combat strength, the territory of the Succubus Divine Kingdom began to expand at an astonishing speed. The scarlet domain, where the sky and the ground were scarlet in all directions, at the highest point in the sky, a huge scarlet eye was closed. Suddenly, the scarlet eye suddenly opened. As this scarlet eye opened, a shocking scarlet violent storm immediately rose in the entire scarlet domain. Looking at the scarlet eye again, if the supreme will was here, he could see some doubts, shock, and anger in this scarlet eye. That idiot Aus. I just rewarded him not long ago, but this guy actually lost to another Scarlet Lord. Now, he even lost him status as a lord. Damn it. To think that I valued him so much. I didn't expect him to be such a weak fellow. I thought that he had a chance of obtaining a trace of the grace of the common people's regal. I guess I was wrong. The Crimson Overlord sighed. A successor like the common people's regal was indeed not something that could be obtained casually. Then, he thought of the succubus lord who had destroyed Aus. Succubus lord. This little guy is interesting. He was clearly defeated by Hus not long ago, and was even about to lose his life. His divine kingdom was also about to collapse. Now not only did he rise again, he even destroyed Aus, who had the strength to compete for the 5th Reserve Army. What the hell is going on? The Crimson Overlord was puzzled. He had not been paying attention to the fight for supremacy among the Scarlet Lords in his great cosmos. Instead, he had been paying attention to the ultimate void, Great Cosmos and the Illusionist clan. Therefore, he did not know much about what happened in his great cosmos. Fortunately, it's not too late to make up for it now, he had a thought. Everything that had happened in the entire Crimson Great Cosmos during this period of time quickly returned to his sea of consciousness. The Crimson Overlord easily accepted everything. However, he did not pay attention to anything else. His attention was all on what had happened to the Succubus Lord during this period of time, especially after she was defeated by Aus. Soon, he understood what had happened. On the way back from his serious injuries, he accidentally encountered 2 Grade 4 Supreme Gods. These 2 Grade 4 Supreme Gods were born in the era of the Chaos Will. Furthermore, they have a feud with the Chaos Will and the Chaos Humans under him. They saw that the long decimated Chaos and the Scarlet Humans actually showed signs of rising again in this era, so they felt indignant and uneasy. They want to stop the rise of the Chaos Scarlet Lords, but due to the rules I set, they can't directly join the Scarlet Lord War. Then they noticed Noctul, the Scarlet Lord who dared to challenge Aus. They have decided to join Noctul and work for him to help him eliminate Aus and the Chaos Scarlet Gods. I see. I can't believe there's such a history. The Crimson Overlord nodded in its heart. In the era of the Chaos Will, the Chaos Humans indeed had many powerful enemies. Now that the Chaos Humans were showing signs of rising again, it was normal for the powerhouses among the enemies not to want them to rise again. Still, something just doesn't feel right. The Crimson Overlord muttered to himself. He carefully watched Noctul's experiences during this period a few times. Suddenly, his eyes narrowed slightly. In the sky of the Reincarnation Sacred Palace of the Blazing Sun Divine. Capital in the Reincarnation Sacred Palace. Zhou Zhou was sitting cross-legged on the Tao Comprehension futon, comprehending the Lord's laws. He only slowly opened his eyes, after a long time. He then sighed. As expected of the inheritance of the Chaos Will. Even if I can only understand the content below the low-level Supreme Will realm now, it's enough for me to benefit greatly. With the help of the Holy Scripture of the Heart and other supplementary cultivation treasures, I feel like I'm not far from the Grade 3 Supreme God realm. The level of my will is also beginning to approach the level of the quasi-Supreme Will. Zhou Zhou was very satisfied with his cultivation process. He could sense that he was not far from the Supreme Will realm. Even if his current strength was only that of a Grade 2 Supreme God, he could already see the dawn of becoming a Supreme Willpower realm expert.